Taxes. Oh, it's a bugaboo subject, isn't it? Everybody hates paying their taxes. Legalized theft, some people call it. I'm going to tell you a secret. I quite like paying my taxes. It means that I'm doing something right and earning money, which is good for my own financial well-being. But what I don't like is paying taxes on things that you shouldn't pay taxes on, or the goalposts being changed and moved mid-investment. What happens if the rules change for gold and silver? Could they impose a wealth tax on the gold that you own? Are they going to change the status of capital gains exempt coins and mean that you will end up losing a lot more in tax? Well, it's possible. I don't know the exact future that lies ahead of us, but one thing is for certain: gold and silver are good at keeping that tax away from the tax man or woman. But how good, and for how long? Hello everybody, Backyard Bullion here, and a very warm welcome to you all joining me for another Precious Metal Ramble, where we have down-to-earth discussions about all things precious and shiny. Now, today's subject of ramble is everybody's favourite bugaboo subject, and that's taxation. Now look, nobody really likes paying taxes, but I quite enjoy the fact that I do pay taxes because it means that I'm earning. It means I'm doing something right, contributing to my own financial well-being. How well those taxes are used is, I guess, a subject for a completely different channel and video. I'm not here to comment on whether taxpayers' money is used efficiently or not. But one thing that has been true for me as an investor of precious metals and other things, that gold and silver are a vehicle by which one can reduce a tax burden. From a capital gains tax perspective, you can have exempt coinage like Britannia's, or you can buy gold, which is VAT exempt, tax exempt when you purchase it, which is a good thing. You can have that lovely tax advantaged investment. But what if the rules change? That's what this video is truly about, to get us thinking about what happens to our gold and silver if suddenly they change the rules, or suddenly the government comes knocking on the door and says, we want all your gold, we want all your silver, we don't like that you own it, you are financially independent and we've had enough of it. Is that something that might happen again? Because it has happened in the past. The world has fundamentally changed since then, and we're going to explore all of these topics in today's video. If you're enjoying our little Precious Metal Ramble, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button as we go. And if you are a follower of the channel, great. If not, then make sure that you subscribe and follow me on this journey towards 100,000 subscribers. We're at 80,000 now, and hopefully 100K will happen next year. So, taxation. Now, as I said, before you reach for the pitchforks, hear me out. I quite like paying taxes. It means that I'm doing something right professionally. Certainly, as a self-employed person, it's always quite nice to pay taxes. One thing I don't like about being self-employed is you have to pay half your taxes up front for the next year ahead when you pay your tax bill, which kind of sucks. But alas, it is what it is. We pay a little bit less in national insurance, so it is social security for you guys in the US. So there are benefits, but paying taxes is a good thing. However, not a fan of the idea of taxation changing mid-investment. And that is something that I've heard quite a lot of late, in the last year and a bit since the new Labour government arrived here in the United Kingdom. There have been a lot of changes, and one of the big changes was capital gains tax. Now, I think it's very unlikely, like super unlikely, that they will completely get rid of the tax exempt status of things like Britannia's or coins from the Royal Mint, for a few reasons. One, there are hundreds of years worth of precedent of those coins being exempt. Second, they are legal tender currency coins technically, and so if they put a capital gains status on these kind of products, then who's to say that they can't just put a capital gains tax status on your money? So if you put money in a bank and you earn interest on it, that money has appreciated, it has gone up in value. Yes, you pay income tax on it, but do you also pay capital gains tax on it? You know, there are plenty of other examples where that could be interpreted in a very negative and bad way. So I don't think that's likely. What I do think is likely is that at some point the non-capital gains exempt coinage, so for example old currency coins around the world like these, well actually old currency coins, those could be determined as a chattel. That's a video topic for another time. But one thing let's say for sure, big chunky silver bars, big chunky gold bars, potentially not chattels, they could be capital gains taxable, or things like US eagles or dollars, or in fact I have a little tube here of them. These will definitely be chargeable assets when it comes to, I'm nearly dropping all my coins, there we go, I'll have a slightly smaller handful. When it comes to Capital gains tax means they are a legal tender currency of another country. They are chargeable assets. I think that will change. I think we'll see those rates equalise with income, which means 40% on tax on your gains if you're a higher rate taxpayer. And I think as well that threshold of £3,000 before you have to pay any tax will come down. Will they change it to zero? I don't think so. Excuse me, for a few reasons. First, if they do change it to zero and you have just one single coin like this that you've randomly bought off eBay, let's say you bought it for £30, you sell it for £40, you made a £10 gain, you owe, let's say you're a lower rate taxpayer, you owe 20% tax, you owe £2 to the government. Are they going to force every man and his dog to register with HMRC to do a self-assessment tax form and pay £2? It would cost way more in admin than it would the tax they receive. So I don't think that will go to zero, but I do think those allowances will go down even further. So it's a difficult one to really know what's going to happen. Will they the big problem would be if they put VAT back on gold. Now, for those that don't know, we used to have sales tax on gold here in the United Kingdom, which would mean that if you bought gold from a dealer, you would have to pay 20% sales tax on top. And when an ounce of gold is £2,500, that is a lot of revenue that could potentially come in from the taxes. Is it going to happen? I personally feel not, but there is a risk that it could. And I'll tell you for why I think that there is a risk it could. Because when the VAT was taken off gold in, I want to say the late 1990s or early 2000s, it was done to match the European Union. Now, we're not in the European Union anymore, and this is not a Brexity video, it's not me moaning about Brexit, but we're not in the European Union anymore, and we do make our own taxation rules and our own VAT rules and sales tax rules. And I could see that little grab for the VAT on gold happening at some point. Gold, whilst not used particularly as much as silver, for example, in industry, there is a lot of companies out there that would be able to claim back the VAT on gold, but not that would outweigh the investment sales of gold, I feel. Would it completely destroy the gold market? I would like to think it would certainly destroy the new gold market. Places like the Raw Mint would suddenly find UK sales just drop off a cliff. People would not want to pay that sales tax on their gold. Would it change the buyback prices from dealers? I doubt it. I think dealers would still only offer spot price for gold. It's the same thing for silver. Granted, certain bits of silver like Britannia's, you get maybe a touch more than spot price these days for them, but you would be struggling. You really would. So I don't think that is very likely. It would cripple pretty large industry, and that would of course then reduce the amount of corporation tax that the government would bring in from places like the Raw Mint and all the other bullion dealers, all the other small independent traders out there that deal with gold and silver as well. It wouldn't happen. I just don't think it would. But what about a confiscation order? What would happen if the government said, we want all your gold? Now, this is something that's happened before. Granted, it was a long time ago, nearly 100 years ago, and the world is a very different place than it was back then. And back then, if you owned a lot of gold, you were probably doing very well for yourself. These days, I feel like whilst it's still a luxury to own, there is a potential that more people will own gold. And I think with the sort of growth of the stackers community and YouTube and social media of everything, there are more people than ever in this country, and I think in the US, that own some gold or silver, something precious metal wise. And, you know, just even, I haven't got, actually, no, I do have some tiny piece of jewelry in this little box here. Here we go. Oh, where is it gone? There we go. I do have a 9-carat gold ring that I bought ages ago for spot price. Doesn't quite fit on any of my fingers perfectly. But, you know, will they tax this stuff? Will they impose, well, I think there is already a sort of sales tax on certain jewelry. But the point here is that I think it would be a pretty big nightmare for them to suddenly just tax and confiscate all the gold. Now, if it did happen, as it did back in the old days, there would be basically a buyback price that the government would arrange on it. So you wouldn't just suddenly have a knock at the door and somebody say, I want all your gold, give me all your gold, I'm stealing all your gold. They would buy it off you at a market price. You bet your bottom dollar they'd probably try and charge you some gains taxes, some capital gains taxes on those as well at the time that they confiscate it, but it would basically make all of this stuff just go away. You wouldn't have it anymore. It would just be a non-investment product. only really hardcore collectors could have it. And in the UK, there was actually a ban on owning gold unless you were applying for a collector's license. And I can see that happening maybe with the way this government is. I mean, you have to, pretty much have an online license to look at anything on the internet these days, it seems. And that's, I think, that's another subject for a whole other thing about privacy online and, putting your ID online to look at any. I mean, it's not even like adult content websites. It's just the other day I wanted to go on an auction house for whiskey, and I had to try and upload my ID just to get on that website. It's crazy. Gambling sites, for example. As adults, we should be able to make the right choices for ourselves, and I fundamentally disagree with the online safety bill. Let parents be parents. Let parents parent their children and keep their children away from the things that they shouldn't look at online. Don't change it for everybody else. But anyway, that's a subject for another time. The point here about gold and silver is, will they shift the goalposts? And another thing that I wanted to talk about is potentially the imposition, which I think is the most likely thing, by the way, of a wealth tax. I don't think they're going to come confiscate your gold. There would be too many unfortunate boating accidents and people won't know where their gold is. Will they potentially have some kind of taxation on your overall net worth, which will include gold and silver? Maybe. We're seeing talk about a property levy, property tax being imposed. And for those that don't know, in the UK, we don't have property taxes like in the US. We don't pay a certain amount every year in property taxes. We have council tax, which is like a local, almost like a state tax basically, which goes towards your local council, police and fire and bins and things like that. But we don't have property taxes. Instead, we have this thing called stamp duty, which is a very archaic 300-plus-year-old system, which was imposed by the king to help raise funds for an army to fight the French. Crikey, how things have changed, but we've still got that. We're not fighting the French anymore, except in the odd football match. But, do we need stamp duty anymore? No. Do we need a wealth tax to replace it? Possibly. It might make more sense, but is that wealth tax going to be just on property? I've said numerous times in my time that I view gold and silver as owning a small property. I view basically this being, £600 worth of a gold sovereign as the equivalent of owning £600 in equity in a house. You get similar returns over a long period of time on this stuff. It's inflation beating, it's wealth preserving, and that's what property is. You just can't live in a gold coin. It doesn't provide you any other shelter or means, but it is an asset that is really, really good at protecting and preserving wealth. So I can see that wealth tax incorporating things like assets. I've heard talk about putting a wealth tax on shares, unrealized gains, taxing unrealized gains, once a year. They're likely things that could happen, and that would be a big concern, I think. So anyway, look, I've rumbled on long enough, and I'm holding back an absolutely horrendous cough right now, with a bit of a sore throat and niggle. So I'm going to wrap this video up and say a huge thank you to you all for watching. If you've not subscribed to the channel already, then please make sure that you do. For the Cool Kids Club, I want you to quote me. There must be a serial number somewhere on this bar. Yes, there is. Quote me serial number AA562199, and then I will know that you're cool. And for those that don't know, what I'm asking for the Cool Kids Club is, if you do comment that serial number, then one day I might choose this as a random video and select a random cool kid commenter for a prize. That will happen when we hit 100,000 subs. So subscribe if you've not already. Otherwise, that's it from me. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. We'll see you on the next video. And as always, please make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe for more.